Welcome to the panel about podcasting, basic and advanced, which means we're going to try to cover a lot of stuff. Let me have a show of hands. Who currently makes a podcast? Who has an idea?
Not everybody.
Let's say everybody up here should.
Lying. All these people make a podcast.
They're planning one.
Yeah.
Who has an idea for a show that they think would be a good podcast? Like that in your heads right now, just don't know where to go with it.
Jonathan, why are you lying?
Again, that's what I'm saying. All these people lying, man. They got ideas. They're just shy.
Well, this guy has a notebook. I know he has ideas.
Right. So up here we've got Martin Thomas and Korey Coleman from a bunch of different stuff, but most recently Double Toasted, which grew out of Spill.com. We've also got Grant Davis and Mike Moody, who are from Permanent Record Studio and also Electric Sweater Network. And y'all are on a couple of shows that you host each. Mike is on Mr. Roboto, the Star Trek Discovery Pod. Most recently he's on TV Dudes now. Grant is on TV Dudes. Korey, you and Martin do Sunday service, and as well as running some Double Toasted stuff, which is a lot of shows, right?
Yeah. It's a lot of shows done by us, me, and some other people where we're not even on those shows. Cool.
It's
a little mini network.
So all of you have done various shows or doing current shows. Shows are constantly going through different iterations, slight changes. Can you talk a little bit about, as far as ideas for shows and going from, hey, I think we could talk about that with my friends for an hour, to what actually makes for a good podcast idea, in your opinion?
Well, first, I want to know who you are.
What did you call her?
I am your first-time moderator, Les Weiler. So I am on TV Dudes with Grant. I host my own podcast, The Good Die Young, that goes into one-season shows, and which is also on Electric Sweater Network and records at Permanent Record Studio. So I might be biased towards these two gentlemen here. All right. So back to my question before I was really interrupted by Mike. What makes the difference between I want to talk about TV or I want to talk about music, or I want to talk about beer or whatever, and winnowing it down to a show idea for y'all?
For us?
Oh, for us?
Whoever wants to start.
Well, a lot of our shows, we started when we were at Spill, it was all revolving around movies. When we started as an Access TV show 20 years ago, it revolved around movies. And it's branched out from there to pop culture to current events. So as long as there's stuff happening in the world or out there on the internet that people are talking about, we have something to talk about. And I don't know, we've been around long enough and are knowledgeable enough to where you can pretty much throw anything at us and we can come with an opinion on it and go into depth.
Is your question also a bit like, why do we feel qualified to have a podcast versus
not
just
at all.
with friends?
It's the internet. There's no qualification.
Okay. I was like, it would be arrogance, I guess.
More,
otherwise.
When you decide to cap it at an hour, let's say, or make your show 30 minutes, or take listener questions, has there been a process over the years of figuring out what flows best for y'all, or what you feel from feedback?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. We're all in agreement there. Thank you.
I think
We're done.
I think one thing to keep in mind is that Korey and Martin, before they started Double Toasted, they came in with a legacy audience. You guys had a pre-built audience from everything you'd done before, being on Access TV. And I think now, if you're starting a podcast now, at least this was the case for me when I started just a few years ago, I really had to find my niche. Just niche down and target a niche that I wanted to talk about. And when you do that, you target a specific audience that is really concerned with that niche. So, I started with a podcast about TV. It was just general. Let's talk about TV. Not a lot of people listened to that, and that was just a few years ago. And we niched down to talking about just one certain TV show and doing deep dives on that. And after we did that, all the fans of that show came and listened, and the audience blossomed, and we started a community. So I think that really helps in this day and age when thinking about a concept for a podcast. You really got to find your niche. Like, if you want to do a podcast about comic books, I think it's helpful to niche down further than that. Okay, let's do a podcast all about LGBTQ comics or something like that and target those fans. That way you can, as an independent creator, you can start finding your community there.
I think that's a good point, because if you have a more fervent, smaller fan base, those people are going to be even more passionate about what you're talking about, and then they will feel more comfortable, I guess, marketing you, proselytizing to other people, like, hey, check out these people, because they talk about something I'm very interested in. Because if it's we do it a general TV discussion, but I think we also try to weave into doing weekly discussions about very specific shows, or we really try to skew more genre heavy, and I think that has definitely served us.
Korey, in going from like a general movie, we're just going to talk about movies, to coming up with shows like Roast and Toast or Sunday Service, like what was your eye on as far as changing the show format?
Well, to just even go back to what you said a little bit further, like whatever it is that you want to do, I think it always has to be something that feels natural to you and something that's even inspirational. I mean, you see all the time, where something popular happens in some category, whether it be movies or music and even podcasting. Somebody says, I want to do what this person's doing because they had some level of success at it, and I love that thing, and they find themselves repeating it, and they'll have the same level of success because, pretty much ripping somebody off. If you have a really inspirational idea, then run with it. Like, my idea wasn't even to make a podcast. People who know me have heard this before. My idea was to sneak into movies and get stuff for free, and that seemed like something that that was cheap, but it was very inspiring and motivating and made me want to do that. And so that's it. And watching these movies made me want to keep putting something out there for people to watch and to listen to. And from that point on, you discover a thing about yourself where it's like, all right, I did this thing to like get some free stuff, but now I really do have a knack to you cheap too, man. Look at me laughing. He's like, I'll sneak in the movies all the time too. You're perfect for a podcast, man. No, but then you do it and then you realize, all right, I do have a knack for actually talking to people and relating to people, and that kind of takes over everything. So I was like, I thought, you know what? When we started Double Toasted, I said, well, I can't do a show about movies every day. Probably, I don't want to do that. But I do know how to talk to people and relate to people. So I figured, like, when Martin and I would hang out, we talk about a number of things. I said, well, we know how to translate that to an audience. And so we decided to do shows. We talk about current events, pop culture, sometimes music. It's pretty much anything that we thought we could talk about with each other, we could bring to an audience. As long as you format that and package it in a way that the audience can accept and relate to, then you're good.
I don't want to get too equipment nerdy because everybody here has a Googling device available to them. But Mike, would you talk about, I know you guys recently set up the Permanent Record Studio. Could you talk a little bit about choices of what do you feel is the bare minimum of equipment to make a listenable podcast?
I mean, there's such a wide range. It can be as small as using your iPhone and recording yourself there and uploading it to the internet. That can be a podcast. Are you going to get a wide range of listeners with that? Probably not. Depends on the content. If your content is really compelling, then you will. But typically, when I started podcasting, I realized that I really liked producing. I really liked the tech. So that's kind of what led me to partner with Grant to open our studio. And we did a lot of research in the best equipment to set up a studio. And you can really just go down a deep rabbit hole Googling this stuff and figuring out what's the best and spending a bunch of money. You really don't need to. You really just need a dynamic mic plugged into a computer or a mixer. But really what matters is that your sound is clean, crisp, clear. People can hear it, and your sound isn't so bad to where the listener is struggling to hear your message. I think it's pretty basic. But I think, you go to to iTunes, and you listen to a number of podcasts, and you find something that is on a topic that you love and you want to engage in, and then the audio is so bad that you turn it off. And the content could have been great, but the audio's bad. So you do have to work on presenting clear audio, but my advice would be don't spend too much money. Don't go down a rabbit hole of finding what the best, $1,000 mic is. You don't need that.
It might be easier to come at this from this direction. Does anybody have a single thing that kind of dooms podcasts when you try to listen to one for you?
Dooms?
Well,
I'm not going to make it through this podcast.
Well, as Mike brought up, if I start to listen and the audio quality is bad, I'll snap it off right away. It just screams that it's amateurish, and it gives me little faith in the content. And it may end up being great, but it's one of these things where there's so much out there. Like, how we're in the golden age of television. There's so much great television. If somebody comes to you like, man, you got to check out this show, you're like, I'm sorry, I'm already filled up with all these other great shows. If somebody comes to you with a good show, you're like, yeah, but I can't watch all the great shows, so I don't have time for a good show. So if I go to listen to a podcast and the audio is weak, or there's a lot of interference, or it sounds bad, then I'm not going to listen. And also, if it's obvious to me that the hosts are not in the same room, because you can hear that. You'll hear one talk and the other doesn't pick up on it. There's a delay, or they're distracted, then it's no good.
Martin and I actually used to do a podcast together, and this was early on when podcasts were starting to become a little bit more of a thing on Korey's site. This is all incestuous up here, and we would have 6 to 8 people on microphone at a time. There's also the matter of thinking about your audience versus thinking about yourself first. It's very important that if you're making it's one thing to hang out with friends and shoot the shit, but when you are doing a podcast, you should think about who you're trying to make this for, and respect that to an extent that you are trying to make whatever you're saying clear to them, whether it's how many people are on mic, whether everyone knows when to talk and not to overtalk each other, and then potentially even doing post-editing of your show, depending upon how tight you make it. Because I do a beer podcast show, and we'll record that show for an hour and a half, and then my producer, he'll go in and edit it for an additional 16 hours for a small show like that. But it's crucial, because who wants to listen to a beer show where half the time we're making the drinking noises? It's gross. Drinking and burping, and then
actually I would, man.
Only that?
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about when we mean niche down.
This is surreal.
You guys were getting drunk as you went along. I'd listen.
I want to hear y'all throw up on camera.
I suppose there's an audience for that as well.
Yeah. And you know something? I just want to go back and say that it's what you make it, man. You can record on anything, as long as you make it presentable and the content is strong. That's what a lot of people are intimidated by. I got to get this microphone. I got to get this set up. I got to get this computer. You can record on like you said, an iPhone if you want to. You don't even need a mic. Is your content strong? Is your sound clear? If that's the case, then you're fine. I do a show with somebody in New York, and the thing is that it's formatted well. We have good chemistry with each other, so you can there's no reason to be intimidated by something. I mean, you got people making movies on iPhones right now. It's the content.
Your co-host Skypes in on an iPhone headset, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fine.
And it's fine. Your content is what's going to speak to people. A lot of people get into creative endeavors thinking I got to have the best of whatever. Hey, look, you can spend $1 million on equipment, but if your talent is shit, you ain't gonna do anything with it.
Yeah.
That's just the honest truth.
Yeah.
Let's talk about time commitments. I know a lot of y'all wear a bunch of hats at various shows and your podcast networks, but speaking about just one show, what's your workflow and time commitment to, I know Grant and I, we record TV Dudes. It takes X amount of time to record it. Grant spends some kind of magic time making it presentable, and then it's out in the world. But I don't know how long that magic time takes. So let's talk about time commitments on how y'all make your shows. Korey?
I spend a lot of time. It's a full-time job for me. So I wake up and I prep the show all day.
Yeah, you probably work 18 hours a day.
Yeah, no, when I get up, sometimes my wife is kind of creeped out by me because I'll get up and I'll stay in one position in the bed, all day. If I grab the computer too early, then I start taking notes on the show. I start doing research. I start pulling up media because we do video also. It's not just audio. So video adds a whole other layer of work on something. So in order to make it presentable and to know what we're talking about and being that it's based on sometimes very current things that happen, I can spend a whole day prepping that show and then it's not even done after that. I'll go home at 2 a.m. I got a guy that works for me in Ireland just so we can be on in sync with each other with my late schedule. So that work is even delegated to someone else. As far as for me, it's a whole day process. As far as the process itself, it's around the clock. But again, you don't have to do that. I'm probably the dumbass that works too hard. I probably should be working smarter. But I'm kind of a perfectionist about it. But I'm sure people have smarter workflows that don't take that long, of course.
Martin, when you're prepping to host a show and make shows, what goes into it for you?
Not nearly as much as it does.
A chair.
Because Mike and I have day jobs. We actually work in the same place in the daytime. But really, it's whatever time I spend going to movie screenings, sometime researching what's going on, and then I show up and he has it all prepped. The biggest thing for me is just being ready for whatever he throws at me, because I don't always. I never have a game plan of what we're going to do that day. It's just there might be a description on the website, and other than that, I'm just have to be ready to go.
I have to say though, he puts work into it. He's very dedicated. His wife hates me because he's always leaving the house to come do his show. And it broke my heart a couple of weeks ago because he did not have to be there. He came in from Dallas or Washington?
Yeah,
I'd
flown from Dallas. I mean, from Washington. I went from Washington to Baltimore to Atlanta to Dallas and drove from Dallas. And I told him I wasn't going to be there, but I ended up showing up.
I had two guys ready to take his place, and he comes walking through the door, and those guys got their hearts broken, and I was kind of mad. But then I said, what the hell are you doing here, man? He's like, well, this really means a lot to me. And I was like, oh. Tell your wife that you're leaving her for me.
She's prepared for it.
I see why she's upset right
now. Grant, I
put no effort into anything.
I wait for the email from you, but I don't know what you do after.
No, I mean, with that, it really depends on the content of the show. Like, we're talking TV, which requires watching TV, which sometimes requires watching, and nowadays with the binge format, like shows drop an entire season. And you go, okay, well, if I actually want to put in the time to watch this and be able to discuss this, I have to sit down and it's a rough job, guys. With my beer podcast, I don't really do much. I was actually brought into that one to be the new perspective on beer, and I'm just going in there and figuring out the tasting process and being able to articulate about different beers.
I'm really doing the wrong podcast, man. You drink beer and watch TV.
Can't complain. Do what you're passionate about. And I believe you said something like that.
You listen to your advice.
Yeah. I need to listen to myself.
Mike, I know you to be a pretty meticulous editor on podcasts.
Right.
Most of what I learned about working on my podcast, I picked up from asking you questions. As far as software and all that, how long do you spend on your shows generally?
In terms of editing and post-production, I mean, I'm just going to take it back to what Korey said and kind of what the message has been here. It all depends on your content. Everything depends on your content and how you want to package it and present it to the listener. So if I record a show and it doesn't sound good for whatever reason, it's going to take me maybe 12 or 16 hours, like your producer who produces a beer podcast. But if it sounds good and all the hosts were vibing that night and everything is great and there's not a lot of editing to be done, it could be done in an hour or two. But typically, this is a general rule, but I find that with audio podcasts in which you have maybe 2 to 4 people on mic, even just one person, if you have an hour of raw audio, that's typically going to take you about 2.5 hours to edit. So you just kind of double it that way. And I produce a lot of shows now with our studio, and a lot of those shows are people in rooms talking, having a conversation. And I find that rule to be true. If someone hands me an audio file that is an hour long, if I'm going to edit it, clean it up, make it sound good and presentable, it's going to take me about 2 hours. So just kind of double the time.
I know every time I've told anybody I do a podcast, at least half of the group that I'm talking to asks how you listen to podcasts or what podcasts are, or I've heard that word, but what are you speaking of? How do you guys tell people about your shows? I know there was a carryover from way back into cable access for y'all and some of this, but how do you share with an audience that maybe used to listen to you in a different format or has never listened to you, how to find you on podcasts or how to get your show in front of them?
I don't even tell people anymore. I lie. I say I work at Subway or something. Because you tell people you do a podcast.
Oh, another one.
And yeah, exactly. They roll their eyes because they think that you're doing something and that's the other thing. Because they roll their eyes like, oh, you do a podcast, and no, what do you really do? Or, that's cute.
Podcasts are the new blogs.
Yeah, or your little show, or like if people ask like, what do you do for a living? I'd tell them I do web design or something, because when you tell them that you do a podcast, and all of a sudden they follow up with like, oh, that's cute. What do you really do? Everybody think, nobody. It's funny how it still is not taken all that seriously, even though it's hit really mainstream and everybody listens to a podcast now. I often tell people that I do. I don't even say podcasting. I don't even use the word that much anymore. I say I do video live streaming. That kind of builds up a conversation right there, because people are automatically kind of interested. They're like, okay, that sounds like a business. That sounds like a legitimate business instead of a hobby. So then they start asking questions. And that's the thing. I don't push that on people. I say that, and people want to follow through and want to know more. That's fine. If they don't, then hey, that's cool. But at least they don't roll their eyes at me and say, oh, pat me on the head and like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, whatever they already have in their head about what podcasts are.
Yeah.
Does anybody use Google AdWords or anything like that? Is there online marketing that y'all make use of?
Yeah. No, we do. We use everything to our disposal. Like, so the site that we do is subscription based. So I went ahead and just had a custom site built, and I had our own subscription plan put on there, so people subscribe to watch our shows. Those shows are converted to audio podcasts. Everybody heard SoundCloud is going out of business, but for some reason they keep paying us. I think we're just kind of a slip up or something, because the money keeps coming in, but they pay well if you put out enough content. And then our videos are edited down to go to YouTube, and we put out enough content on YouTube to where we get some good income from there. Also, YouTube serves as great marketing that you get paid for. We get a lot, although we make most of our money from our subscriptions. YouTube is gaining on that, and also YouTube is like there's a lot of conversions from it, because people see that, they want to know what the site is about, so they go over there.
Is that ad revenue from YouTube?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and now we're starting to get sponsorships. So we'll at the beginning of a video, we'll say Dollar Shave Club or BetterHelp.com. Do a little ad for that. So we those are coming in more consistently, and those are very good money too.
It's hard to market to people who don't know what podcasting is. Like, I have a very estranged relationship with my father, and he texted me the other week and said, I heard you're on the internet radio.
Yeah, I'm sitting on it right now.
How do I listen to that? And I texted him back. I said, internet radios are really expensive. You don't want to buy one of those. And that ended the conversation, so I'll talk to him in another 2-3 years. So, yeah, that's... Marketing to people who don't know what podcast is a little tough, but I think now, if you're just starting out as an audio podcaster, we talked earlier about niching down and finding that niche and marketing to that group. That's really what you want to do. Like, when I started my Star Trek podcast that Grant is also on, what we did is we found our peer group who really loved Star Trek. And
Not hard to find.
Not hard to find, no. And we, even on a face-to-face way, and we talked to them about it, and then we emailed them and really just kind of sold them on what the value of the show would be, and gave them preview access to the show, and they liked it, and they spread it to all their other friends who liked Star Trek. So you got to be crafty and find your audience even before you launch a show, I think.
I know Double Toasted sprang out of a Kickstarter for it, correct?
Yes.
So there was some. You had proof of concept as far as like there are definitely listeners ready to go. Anybody who put money down for it, I would assume. And now you have a subscription service. I know TV Dudes is on Patreon.
Right.
What all has worked, or what have you tried? You talked a little bit about YouTube ads, Korey. What various avenues have you tried over the years for revenue, and how have you kind of metric success on these?
I think I learned about Patreon and how to monetize my show. Our shows are 100% listener supported. I learned about that through Grant because he was doing it so well with Patreon. Maybe you can talk about what you did with Patreon.
Patreon popped up. It was about like 4 or 5 years ago. And it's a direct way for you to interact with the people that are just actively listening to your content. And you basically just ask them to become a patron, donate as much money as they want because they like what you're doing. I mean, I think a lot of these creative endeavors now, you are not dealing with as many of the boundaries of like you have to have a middleman who markets what you do. Mm-hmm. You can talk right to your audience and be like, hey, if you guys actually appreciate what we're doing, and you want to support us and see us be able to grow and maybe become something else that is able to engage with you guys even more, we appreciate your support. So, we have listeners that just kick in $1 per episode you put up or two, and, cumulatively, that really helps out and supports. I mean, from there, we were able to help grow into having also a studio and producing a lot more shows, and it's worked out great for us. But, with everyone, there's different avenues for what's going to be successful.
Yeah. So is that set up like a subscription where it automatically comes out every month, or?
It can work a couple different ways. You can either have people charge per month, or you can do per content. Like right now, it's if I put out a show, you get billed. If I don't, you guys don't have to pay for anything. So you're only paying for a show that you're already invested in listening. It's kind of great.
And it's definitely a lower barrier entry for
it's so much easier
versus an in-house subscription service that you guys developed yourself.
I think I wouldn't even recommend doing it the way I did it, at least not right off the bat. I mean, there's so many other ways to do it. The only reason why we did it that way is because, again, it's video. It's not just audio. Mm-hmm. And, and it's a lot more, overhead to pay for. But, I mean, like he was saying, there's so many things to get into now. There's so many people who are making money through Patreon. That's people making money on Instagram, and and people are realizing that. So they're putting things like the ability to stream and broadcast on Facebook and Instagram, as many people know. So I think it's better to use some of the places that offer the resources for you to not have to pay for that overhead. Like YouTube, they store your videos. There's places that will store your audio. There's places that will pay you for your ad content. There's instead of investing in stuff, try to do it using what's out there. That old saying, don't reinvent the wheel. Be smart about it.
With something as well like Patreon, you also can set goals that you have your community kind of help you invest in to continue to grow, which is also nice because they see a return on their investment in you, in your content. It's not just, I'm already getting the podcast from you for free. Why should I invest in you? You could say, give us $5 a month, and once we are able to get $200 a month from all of our collector patrons, we will start doing additional bonus content that's just for you guys, or we'll start doing T-shirts for you guys, or we'll start doing live events that you can attend to. Like you guys go out, you guys actually travel around and do a lot of events.
We're starting a tour now too. Yeah. So we're trying to make money the show business way too. Use everything, sell shirts, which we do. And I wish I could remember it. I was trying to look at my phone. I don't think I have it, but there are services out there. There's one that we use. It's not It's not paying a lot, but it's definitely something more than what used to be out there. They got services now that you can also put ads on your own podcast. There used to be a point where these people that would do ad-based monetization of revenue, you would have to have a certain amount of numbers, and you would have to know a guy who knows a guy, whatever, for them to even let you into their network. Now there are services out there that say, you know what, we'll pay you so much for putting however many ads you want to put in your podcast. If you do like a 4-hour podcast, go ahead and put 20 ads in there if you want to. And if you put out it's all depending on how much content you put out. But at least again, it's putting more of the power in your hands to make your own money than waiting on somebody to approve of you and approve you to have the right numbers for it. I use one of those right now, and it gives us about like $300, $400 a month.
You ever had one of the thing like that backfire?
Backfire?
I mean, have you ever had like a bad pushback from subscription or from membership on like that's one too many ads or that's a bridge too far?
Oh yeah.
How do you respond to feedback like that?
I had to turn it into if you'd be surprised if you just turn it into entertainment, then it will people will like it more. See, I mentioned ads and they leave already. Look at that. Ads.
Oh, not this again.
I'm getting the hell out of here. He's trying to sell me something.
You guys like Nike?
No, if you put too many ads in, that service I just told you about, I was like, I'm doing a 2.5-hour podcast. I'm putting an ad in here every 10 minutes, and people are like, what the hell are you doing, man? And then I would even on our show, our videos, I would just mention just briefly like, hey, go to dtmerch.com, buy a shirt from us, and people are like, oh, this guy's saying this again. It got to a point where I blew up on somebody who wrote something bad about me, and then it turned into a joke. And now
it's a running gag.
Now it's a running gag. People they get mad if I don't do an ad. So you didn't mention that shirt, man. So yeah, it has backfired. But again, a thing to remember is if you can always take something and twist it around to make it entertaining, something that you can make people laugh or inform people. You can do anything.
Yeah, I think you're talking about host-read ads, right?
Yeah.
You read the ad,
yeah.
Not just a commercial inserted into your podcast, but if the best ads, it's a win-win situation. The advertiser will pay the podcaster to promote their product. So the podcaster does that in a fun, entertaining way, like the way Korey does. And it's content. It's not just an ad, So, Korey gets paid to do the ad, but it's also fodder for fun content. I think most people will enjoy ads like that a lot more than commercials that are inserted and had nothing to do with the host. So host-read ads are the way to go.
All right, we're going to open it up to some questions. I've got one right here.
There is. I didn't want to waste people's time trying to search for it on my phone, but I will find it and get with you afterwards. Yeah, no problem, man. I think it's called Dynamo, actually. Yeah. It's an extension of the guy that created Blog Talk Radio. I think that's it. But I will look it up for you. I'll get with you afterwards and make sure. Yeah, no problem. Are you talking about like doing radio dramas,
like narrative fiction podcasts or radio plays or yeah?
To what extent do you want to know, like specifically? I take it that's what you want to get into.
I don't know. I've seen these success of Nightingale and things like that, and I'm very good. I don't know when. I'm just curious if you guys can tell me, is there ways to get it? Is it a thing where people get involved with one of these other networks? They bring fictional content, or your impressions of those shows?
I think immediately I can tell you that with something that's fictional, drama-based, or you're telling a narrative or whatever, if it's audio only, that's where your production is really going to come in. You think about people. There's again, I should show you this thing that I found. Discovered this guy who made a career out of telling horror stories. This predates like Twilight Zone and all this kind of stuff. He's doing radio dramas, And people loved him for his production, and people are now going back and rediscovering this because podcasts are trying to like put more production into their work, sound effects, music, dramatic reading. There are kids who are making money on YouTube just by reading creepypastas, and they read them in, they create the right atmosphere, they put in the right sound effects, they put in the right production, and they spit them out consistently. So I mean, if I think you were to get into something like that, again, it takes time. But if you were able to put that out, and that's another thing about podcasting and any kind of thing online. You can put something out once a month or twice a month or something where everybody knows, like, okay, he's putting it out at this time. I'm gonna go catch the next episode. If you can put something out even just once a month with great production, you'll start to build an audience. I guarantee you.
And especially if you're doing something that's a narrative that's not based on what's happening currently, you could build up several shows so that you make sure that even as you're doing the new ones, you already have a bank of shows that are going to come out on that time every 2 weeks, so a person can count on, okay, I know my show is going to be this day. And that's a great way to get somebody hooked.
And it's evergreen.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as monetizing that, you can also use one of these. I mean, I already promoted Patreon, but you can use something like that to, along the way with the process, you actually show the behind-the-scenes process to people that are supporting you. You can be like, here's the editing process, here's when we go into the studio, here are storyboards for like what we envision this kind of world looks like visually, or yeah. I mean, I think any way that you can try and engage an audience like that. Like with narratives, there's so many things. You could ask for fan art submissions and like get people involved and invested in how you storytell that, how you take it in different avenues. It doesn't just, I mean, there can be this transmedia aspect of it that doesn't have to be just constrained to being a podcast, to being an audio thing, if ever you want to branch out with it too.
I also feel like maybe more than current event or current movie podcasts, you probably would have a better luck at people discovering your podcast and then binging the back catalog of it in a way that like I might not do for weekly reviews. Anybody else have a question?
Oh, like how do we
The
constantly
question is-
engage the audience?
The question is about engaging audience comments back. I don't know if everybody could hear.
Well, with our shows there, as they run live,
Awesome.
we have a chat, and there's people within the chat talking. So we can always look over and see what they're saying and comment on that. So that includes the audience. We're friends with a lot of the people on Facebook, so we get to interact that way. We have an email segment at the end of every show, so people are sending emails that we're talking to. Sometimes we talk to them over Skype. So a lot of it has been, even from back in the Access TV days, we would do the weekly show, and at the end, it would be a call out to the audience, like, hey, we just got done with the show. We're going to be downtown at Opal Divines. Anybody wants to come out and hang out with us? And people would. They would show up, some of them every week. We've had some people who've been our closest friends for a couple decades who we met through that. So it was a matter of how do we move that to the internet, and it's been through this way. And also with our touring, when we go to different cities, there's some people who will show up at every city we go to, or even move to Austin at some point. Like one of the guys who was sitting over there, he's left now. But so it's always been so much about the audience engagement as well.
Yeah, you guys didn't just like have a little fan base. You guys have cultivated like this whole community.
Yeah.
And it's like an ongoing, constant process of, I mean, it just becomes a part of your daily life to be like checking in with other people, seeing what comments you got, engaging with the people that are investing in you. I think it's vitally important that you continue to want to keep that conversation going with your audience, because they're the ones that are there supporting you.
It's important to go where your audience is and interact with them there. For a lot of podcasters, that's Facebook and Facebook groups. So if I start a podcast on a certain subject, there's probably maybe Reddit subreddits or Facebook groups about that subject. And even before I would launch my show, I would go in there and engage with those members of that community, and not start promoting what I'm doing right away, but genuinely engage with them because it would be something I'm interested in if I'm starting a podcast, and get known in that community. And then when my podcast starts, let everybody there know about it, and just consistently let them know, here's what we're talking about on the show. You can even pull quotes from your podcast that you think could go viral and drop those in social media, and just tag some people who you think might be interested. And the greatest thing that happens in podcast marketing is when other people are waiting for your podcast to come out, and they share it on social media before you do. That's happened to us a few times, and if you can get to that point, that means you're doing social engagement, right?
There's a question back here.
Awesome questions.
But it all depends on, again, the nature of your podcast, right? I mean, it's engagement with your audience is always fine, but the level of it depends on what you're doing. If you want to do a narrative podcast like you're doing, and it might be good to go in and say, hey, thanks for listening and whatnot, but you definitely don't always have to do the level of engagement somebody else is doing. Again, engagement that we do is sort of a full-time thing because we have to cultivate a community to keep it going. Sometimes a community can take off on its own and kind of do the work for you, So I know some people, like I told you, who do the narrative thing, they like to kind of keep an allure of mystery. Yeah, can't get rid of some people sometimes. Yeah, we've had people come to. I tell you what, you want to know what a danger is to the level of engagement that you have. I've always made sure that I to come across. I'm sure part of the success that we have is the personality of we don't know a stranger, and people come to town and they say, I feel like you've been my brother, my uncle, my dad. I was raised by you, whatever. And I know you. And
that happens a lot.
Yeah, and then you get that person who comes to town, man. I've always wanted to meet you, man. I love you. I'm having trouble with my wife. Can I stay with you just for a couple of weeks? I'm like, hell no, you can't stay there. What's your name again, man? So there's a danger in that. I have a stalker that at every event that we do, this guy prints out flyers, posters, hangs them up or everywhere in the vicinity. It's kind of scary and flattering at the same time. I mean, because this guy's
it's like, hey, we made it.
Yeah. This guy's put in work for years, man. Years. So I get an email every week from a guy, hey, you son of a bitch, I'm talking to you. I don't respond, but it happens every week.
Star Trek fans don't do that.
Okay, I'm a Trekkie now.
Yeah, you still won't reply to me. What's going on here? Come on.
You know where to find me.
I always have to set up a panel just so I can be close to you.
Well, this is all a ruse. Thank you guys for participating. It's just to get Grant around his court order. Does anyone else have a question? Doesn't even have to be about podcasting.
Can I stay with you?
Who needs to stay with Korey?
By the way, it is Dynamo. It's from a place called Vox Nest. Yeah, VOXNEST, just in case anybody else wants to know. You can immediately start applying that to your podcast. It's a good start before you start making an archive of content. If you just need a little extra change coming in, it's a good place to start.
There's obviously a whole lot about kinds of mics, what advertising thing might be the new one this year that you can all Google. What do each of you feel is the handiest thing that you figured out for yourself in terms of just doing shows over the years? I mean, obviously everybody should try to say and like less. I'm told. I don't. But what's the handiest thing any of y'all have picked up over the years on your own that you weren't able to just go Google about a better mic or something?
In my experience, it's been finding a team. I'm not sure that speaks directly to what you were saying, but I'm an incredible introvert, and I started podcasting because I wanted to connect with people, and I wanted to do it through the internet because I'm afraid of people.
Yeah, I started this because I thought it was yelling at people from a spot alone in my house.
Right. But I tried to do it all alone, and while I could get shows out, it was really hard to do it all alone, especially where you were talking about doing a audio drama. You're going to need a group. You're going to need a team, people who are not only passionate about what you're doing, but passionate about your subject. And I think just connecting with people one-on-one who are in your town or wherever they are, they're going to help you build that team. If you can build a team before you launch a show or launch really any creative project, it's going to have that much more success.
For anything that you're going to do, try make sure it's something that you're passionate about, because you don't want to invest in something at the start and then you find that you've committed to something that you don't want to keep doing. So that's why I do beer.
Yeah. No, you're definitely right about that. You got to be honest with yourself while you're starting something. Are you starting something because you really are passionate about it, or you just enjoy doing it, or are you starting it out of ego? Tell you something, egos are expensive. So if you're doing it for ego, you better try to make some money. But if you're doing it because you enjoy it, I did start doing this by myself years ago. I hosted a TV show, just looking to a camera for about 30 minutes to an hour every week. And I did it for a couple of years, and then I brought some guys on, like another guy named Martin came on, and we did that for like 10 years. I invested 10 years in just a hobby. And it wasn't because I was trying to make money. It's because I enjoyed doing it. That was it. And it got popular enough to where people around town gave me the confirmation I needed to just get me by. Like, hey, this is great. Let me buy you a beer, come to this party, whatever. So we got paid that way, but we never were like, we got to make money. If we don't make money, then we stop. Then we're going to stop. And so we kept going until it finally took off. And also be honest with yourself on why you are you doing it? I mean, if you do have a level of success with it, then are you going to take it to another level, or are you content where you are? Because there's a point where if you do want to take it to another level, you're going to find yourself trying to do it in ways that you're wasting money. If you're not making money at it and that's your whole goal, then rethink it. Be honest with yourself, and don't lose a lot of money, don't waste a lot of time. Pull it back to a hobby or find another avenue to take. Find another approach to try to support yourself by doing that. It's the whole middle ground with everything. Between am I having fun doing it and how serious do I want to take it? You find that middle ground of having fun doing it. I'm being sincere about it, but I'm also being professional and making this presentable and doing the right things to actually make it a career. I think you'll be fine. Just be self-aware.
And based on what you said, and also something Mike said about finding a good team, it's not as easy as it might seem. I mean, if you get something going and it's moderately successful, you'll probably attract people who get excited and want to join you and be part of the team, but they have to be honest with themselves. Some people have a desire to do it and they don't have the talent, or maybe they have the talent and they don't have the dedication. You really, really need both. And you might get somebody who's dedicated for a while and then they drop off, and you just have to be prepared. Like, that's how it's going to be. Mm-hmm. But yeah, finding a good group of people, it's rare, and we've been lucky and several times through several iterations to have good people, for a while until they were ready to do something else. But another thing, the advice I would give that I feel I've learned and stick by is that when you're on the mic talking, other than not saying and like and just trying to fill space, but it's important to sound like you know exactly what you're talking about, whether you do or not. I mean, that's the biggest thing. You just don't even question it. Maybe get that out of your head. Just talk like you know exactly what you're talking about.
No. All I do is worm my way through making up shit. No way. No.
I'll also say, let's talk about teams, not to just blatantly disagree with anybody up here, but I do think it can be done by yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, because and that's another thing you got to be prepared to do. If you take on something, just be prepared to do it by yourself, because people will come in. If you start doing something that's cool, man. Let's just say you start doing your narrative thing. If you're like, hey man, I'm scary too. Let me come in and do some stuff, and they're going to come in thinking like, we're going to take off. They already have a goal in their mind. Like, oh, we're going to make money at this point, or, I'm going to be famous after this. And if they don't hit it at that point where they have that goal in their head, they're going to leave. And if you depend on them, then, you're stuck. People gonna hate you for you'll get all kind of names: control freak, stubborn, asshole, all kind of things, man. But don't worry about it. Be prepared to you don't need anybody at the end of it. There's all kind of ways to do something in this area. That's the beauty of the internet, and digital technology. You don't need anybody really if you really don't want to go that route. Somebody say amen over there.
Yes. Yeah, you just play all the characters.
Can be done.
Yeah. Just Billy West it, man. You can do it. Well, thank you guys for coming out and listening to us talk about podcasting for about an hour. Does anybody else have anything they want to ask? I've had a bunch of talkative people. I know it's going to sound authoritative, but that's an act. They don't know what they're talking about. It's just
No.
It's a skill.
I don't even do podcasting.
He's just got the voice down.
He works at Subway, right?
I work at Burger King.
Well, thank you all so
In
much.
between shifts.
Buy a bunch of stuff at
Thank you.
Staple.
Thank you.
Thanks.